You're a quorum. Sit down. Oh, okay. All right. We'll call our December meeting of Central Oklahoma Transportation and Parking Authority to order. A couple items from the chairman. I'd like Jason to introduce a couple of new staff members and a little background on them.
Yeah, it'd be my pleasure to introduce a couple of new folks that have joined our Cotpa team. I'd like to start with Corey Hubert. Corey, if you want to, right, there you go. Corey joins us as our new parking manager. He has relocated from Tampa, Florida, where he was the manager of the parking system for the Port Authority there. And we want to welcome him to Cotpa and to Oklahoma City.
Would you like to say anything? I'd be happy if you'd like to say something. A little of your background for just a minute. I don't mean to put you on the spot, but we need to get acquainted and get to know who you are.
Thank you for the warm welcome. Parked cars, managed parking facilities for the past 15 plus years, from Portland, Oregon International Airport to Denver, Colorado, Detroit, Michigan, Tampa, Florida, and Oklahoma. Happy to be here and look forward to working with everybody.
Now back in the heartland of America. You've gone from the west coast to the east coast. So.
Very
well, I heard you just got moved in right when the ice storm came. So.
Yes. Yes. The wife was thinking she brought the ice storm.
Okay. All right. Well, welcome to Oklahoma City.
Thank you.
I'd also like to take a minute to introduce Chip Nolan. Chip joins us as an associate planner. He'll be focusing primarily on short-range planning, supporting operations, some of what we're doing in marketing and public information, in addition to scheduling. He's also going to be our Title VI officer and DBE liaison. So Chip joins us actually from CityLink in Edmond, and we are glad to have him as part of the team as well.
All right. Welcome. Thank you. All right. Do we have any citizens to be heard? I don't see any. All right. Do I hear a motion to approve our minutes of our November meeting?
So moved.
Second. All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. Consent docket. There are 6 items on the consent docket. Are there any items that any of the trustees would like any explanation about? Or any of them you'd like to say anything about, Jason?
I think it's pretty straightforward.
All right. Then I would entertain a motion to approve our consent docket.
Move approval. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Items for individual consideration. Before we get into those, item E is to enter into executive session, and I guess I need a motion for that and then a voice vote to enter into executive session at the end of the meeting.
I move that we enter into executive session at the end of the meeting.
James? Yes.
Yes.
All right, thank you. Item A is approval of change order number 2 to the contract with Mcnatt and Company for elevator modernization for the Santa Fe parking garage.
Yes, change order number 2. Continued work with the elevator project over at Santa Fe. This change order increases the contract amount by $41,600 or 5.25% of the original contract. Some of the items that are included in this change order include replacing the flooring in the elevators. The flooring that we installed in the 2 south elevators and that was actually included in the original specifications was a very small tile type floor, light in color, and no longer than the elevators have been operational. It's already looks pretty dirty. It's going to be hard to maintain, and it's not all that slip resistant. So we feel like it's certainly in our best interest for the longevity of the elevator to go ahead and replace that flooring now with more of a rubber mat material like we see in our Arts District parking garage. So I know we've all been in those elevators, and so that's what the flooring will look like. A couple of other items that were required by the city elevator inspector and also consistent with the first change order where we had to make similar modifications to the elevator pits in the south elevators. We're also adding lighting to the elevator pits now in the north elevators, and we are modifying the pits to install sump pumps. This work will add 35 days to the project, and our new estimated completion is January 18th. And I say estimated completion, and then inspections will follow. Be happy to answer any questions.
Well, so, I mean, the south elevators, how are we doing on the north elevators, or what's kind of the status of it?
Right, so the status of the north elevators, we still have elevator number 1 completely down, and we're replacing the cab and all the associated equipment. That one is currently under construction. And then once that one is complete, which should be operational within the next couple of weeks, again, pending inspections, then we will move on to the southern elevator in that north tower and take it completely down. And so our goal, since bringing the 2 elevators on the south end of the garage online, has been to try to keep 3 of the 4 elevators operational for the patrons.
Okay, good. All right. Any questions? If not, I'd have a motion to approve item A. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Item B is a change order to the tenant build-out over at the Arts District tenant space. And Jason gave me, the last time I was downtown last week, a kind of a walkthrough over there, and it's really looking nice, and the space is really going to be nice for all our tenants. So.
Yes, and change order number 4, again, it's to a contract with W.L. Mcnatt, but as mentioned, it's a different contract. It's for the build-out of the Arts District garage. This change order represents an increase of $18,362, or just under 1% of the original contract amount. As far as the change order goes, there's a few items. One is costs and additional days due to interruptions in the contractor's original critical path, as they were estimating how many days it was going to take them to do the work. 2 things have caused the project to be extended. One is initially they ran into some problems with drainage on a sewer line, so Flintco had to come back out on site, make a few corrections, so that added some days and time. And then at our direction, at Cotpa's direction, when we asked the contractor to essentially use all the resources available to finish up the space for the Employee Wellness Center and the Oklahoma City Public Schools Foundation, again, that caused a little bit of a disruption in their critical path and resulted in extended days. So that item there, for those 2 interruptions, it's 37 additional days at a cost of $13,394. Some of the other items that are associated with the change with the change order were related to items that came up in an inspection. We were required to install mixing valves in the restrooms, both in the coffee shop and in the common area restrooms. A grease trap was required for the coffee shop area, and then we ended up adding 2 water filtration systems also for the coffee shop area. Those changes combined are about $4,968. So with that, we've actually done pretty good overall on the budget. Change orders 1 through 4 represent a total increase of 3.1% over our original contract.
All right, thank you. Any questions? If not, I have a motion to approve item B.
So moved.
All in favor? Opposed? Motion passes. Excuse me. Next item is approval of a professional service agreement for our streetcar operation consulting services. And before Jason discussed this, I have asked him to add streetcar to our program report, since we'll have that responsibility when it's up and running. And I have asked him that I feel like the trustees have not, because there are so many subcommittees or oversight committees, that the trustees really don't have a very good knowledge of what all is going on with the streetcar. And I know I don't, and I get a lot of questions about it. And so I think if we add that to our program reports and then we get an update each month on that, then the trustees will be better informed. So,
All right.
Jason?
And I think the timing of that that request and incorporating that report into our regular monthly meetings is great, considering we're now at the point where we can bring on a consultant to help us look at our various operations. So what this contract will do here is allow us to award, or I should say enter into a professional services agreement with Shields, Oblitz, and Johnson for streetcar operator selection consulting services. And so what we really are expecting this consultant to assist us with is, one, take a look at different operations and maintenance service delivery models. So there's at least 2 or 3 different models that we'll look at. We'll put costs to those models, and then the consultant will have a recommendation for us that will eventually be brought to the board here. So that's one of the big pieces, is deciding what that model is going to look like. And then once that model is determined, then going in and updating our existing operations plan. From there, the consultant will assist us with drafting a request for proposal, which we will advertise in order to solicit bids and proposals for a streetcar operator, basically a private contractor to help us run the streetcar system. And then the consultant will help us evaluate those proposals, as well as assist us with negotiation. So it's a pretty extensive set of responsibilities that we're asking the consultant to help us with. But feel very good about the firm, SOJ. They have a lot of experience working with various streetcar systems throughout the country, Seattle, Portland. I believe they're working with maybe Detroit on some of their streetcar operations. So lots of experience.
When you say model, what are you referring to, really?
Well, there's different ways to approach the delivery of operations and maintenance, particularly with staffing decisions. There's options for a full turnkey operations model where a contractor would come in and it'd be all their staff. There's a model we could look at where Cotpa staff provided the operations and maintenance. There's a model where there's a combination of the two. Maybe a contractor provides the management and then Cotpa employees actually provide some of the frontline services. So there's different trade-offs and costs associated with each of those, and that's what the consultant's going to help us evaluate.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
I'll make a comment. I've served on the selection committee, so I'll recuse myself from this vote.
Okay. Do I hear a motion to approve item C?
Second.
All in favor? Opposed? Motion passes. Item D is approval of contract with ORI Environmental for waste oil and other hazardous waste removal disposal. So,
Right. This is a contract that came up for renewal. We bid the contract in October and November. We received actually 2 responses to our bid. One was a no bid from Safety Clean. Apparently the scope of the project was not significant enough for them to bid. We did receive a responsive and determined to be a competitive bid from ORI Environmental. And so what this company will do for us, they essentially provide the disposal of the used motor oil and other fluids that are associated with our bus maintenance facility. You'll notice the estimated annual cost to Cotpa for the contract is $25,000 annually, and we have wrote the contract so that Cotpa and other city departments, if needed, can purchase off of this agreement.
who's been doing it previously? Is this the same company or the?
This is a different company. We had a company by the name of January Environmental or January Transport that helped us with it previously.
Okay. They didn't bid on it, I mean? Okay.
Right.
All right. All right, do I hear a motion to approve that item?
Move approval.
All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. Okay, next item is our ratification of claims and payroll. Unless there's any questions from any of the trustees on that, I would have a motion to ratify.
Move approval.
All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. Next item is our financial reports, and that's revenue and expenditures, budget to actual for the 4 months ended October 31st. Any items on there, Jason, you'd like to make comment about?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to talk a little bit about our budget to actuals for our transportation, our parking, and our river operations. And I'd like to start on page 2, which is the financial statement for our transportation operations. And starting with our operating revenues, I'd like to point out that our revenues to date are $998,247. That's our passenger revenues. That's, excuse me, almost 4% above what we had budgeted, so we continue to see strong ridership and strong revenues from the passengers' fare box revenue. Excuse me. I did want to talk a little bit about our federal grants. You'll notice that we are showing to be $428,000 under on what we had budgeted or what we had expected through October of 2015. And that number is consistent with the same variance that we looked at in September. And so just as a reminder, the reason for that variance is, one, is we continue to have savings in our bus maintenance operations, and we'll look at that in our expenditures here in a minute. So our maintenance operations are coming in less than what we had expected, so therefore we've sought less reimbursement. So that's one thing. Also, if you'll recall, in September, due to the changeover in the federal fiscal year, we had to take our draw earlier than we normally would, and we ended up not being able to draw full maintenance reimbursement on some of the payroll expenses related to mechanics and so forth that maintain the buses. And then lastly, we had a switchover in the actual system that the FTA uses for us to use to submit our draws. It's a software system that was offline in October, so we didn't do an October draw. So that's the primary reason for the variance. Now, I did want to mention that in November, once the system was back online, we were able to seek a draw or a reimbursement of about $1.7 million. That was in November. Now, not all of that will go to maintenance reimbursement, but I did, as an information item, want to let you know we have caught up on all of our draws through November.
Just so I understand it better, when we budget items for federal grants, does that go to the FTA? Do they know what we've budgeted, or is that just for our own benefit, and we have some idea what the pool of money is that we can request?
Right. Well, the amount of money that we receive from the FTA through our 5307 funding, that's determined by a formula. So we generally know how much we're going to receive to support our operations and our capital.
Budget item.
And then we roll that into our budget. Right. And it's usually, just as we would with any budget process, we look at past history, see what we've spent. We have, I believe, increased the budget a little bit in our maintenance over the last couple of years for a couple of reasons. One, we have more service on the street, and two, our buses are getting older, so we've increased that budget. What we're seeing is we're just, at least through 4 months of the year, we haven't spent as much of that maintenance budget as we expected. Now, that can turn rather quickly, and sometimes it does when you have a engine failure or a couple of transmissions that you have to replace. The costs can add up rather fast. But so far, things are really good in terms of maintenance expenses.
And I know I've asked this, because we have not requested and we have that variance, we don't lose that. It can just made up in this fiscal year because it carry over.
Yes, sir. It carries over.
Okay.
So. And then looking at our operating expenditures, we continue to be under budget overall on operating expenditures. Looking at personnel services, you'll see we're at about 93.9% of our budget. Now, that has changed substantially since our September financial, where we were showing to be about 77%, or almost $1 million under budget. And the reason for that is that one-time contribution to the Cotpa pension plan of $427,000. As you'll recall, that was on our claims and payroll for October that was approved in September, and now that amount is reflected on this October financial. So that was an expected change. Other services and fees continue to be under budget at about 85.2% of what we would expect. And then supplies, and again, this is where we purchase a lot of our parts for our buses out of this line right here. We're at about 67.6% of what we had budgeted. Now, the other thing is this is where we budget fuel, and our fuel's running about $200,000 under budget year to date. So that's a significant contributor to that savings. But again, this is where we're seeing some savings in our parts related to maintenance.
I wished you weren't doing so good here. Craig's going to want that money somewhere else or something. You shouldn't be doing it quite this good.
Yeah. Okay.
Pay no attention to the mail.
I mean, it kind of worries me.
Overall, you'll notice our excess of revenues over expenditures through 4 months of the fiscal year is $729,000 on our transportation division. Okay, and then looking at our parking operations on page 3, parking revenues are just about where we would expect them to be at 101.8% of the budget. We continue to see strong revenues in our contract and our transient parking, but we are starting to see some declines on our event revenue. In fact, we're down about 9% on our event revenue. Overall, though, as you can see, our revenues are on budget. The lease revenue that you see showing at about 61.5% of the budget, or about $15,000 under. Again, just as a reminder, that's due to CARE ATC, or I should say the Employee Wellness Center, and the Oklahoma City Public Schools Foundation, those tenants coming online later than what we had anticipated when we developed the budget. Once we have the other tenants in the tenant space, we'll exceed our budgeted amount for the year.
There you go. We're saving money so the city won't pay us because they know we don't need it.
And then on our
No, it doesn't work that way. Okay.
And then on our operating expenses, we continue to have some savings in our personal services. That's related primarily to the vacancy we had in the parking manager position for a time. And then on supplies, you'll notice we're actually about $4,000 or $4,000 over budget, or about 118% of what we had projected. And that's due to the purchase of about 60 to 65 modems for the electronic parking meters. We were in the process of upgrading about 125 of those parking meters with 3G modems. When we originally purchased them, they were equipped with 2G technology, and the network will no longer support 2G after the end of the next calendar year. So we'll have those replaced well ahead of time, but it is an additional expense for us. Overall, you can see our total revenues in excess of expenditures for parking are just under $1.5 million through 4 months of the fiscal year. And then talking about our river cruises, looking at operating revenues, on our passenger revenue, we are at about 77% of the budget, or about $17,000 short of what we had projected. Our general revenue continues to remain high. What we're seeing is decline in non-transit revenue. That's specialty cruises and charters, revenue generated from those activities. And, part of that is in order to manage our expenses, we purposefully cut back on our specialty cruises. And then, as we've heard Jeannie mention, our charters are down substantially this year, primarily due to a lot of cancellations in May with the heavy rains. So we are behind on revenues. On the flip side, though, in terms of operating expenditures, we are on budget. In fact, we're at about 95% of our expenditure budget. So we have done, I think, a pretty good job of managing our expenses this year. We're still trying to find out that kind of where do we go with, enough specialty cruises and non-transit type activities to generate revenue without pushing us way over on expenses. Overall, you'll see that we do have a deficiency in terms of our expenses have exceeded our revenues by about $17,000 year to date, and primarily that is due to less marketing funds provided from the River Trust. We had about $50,000 budgeted and expected to come from the River Trust, and as we know, that budget had been reduced. And so that's impacting that number. Certainly something that we can manage within our own transit budget. It's not a concern at this time, but just to offer an explanation of the numbers. And with that, I'll be happy to answer any other questions on the budget to actuals. I have a few comments on the pension plan if you'd like me to share those now.
Yeah, why don't you go ahead and do that, and then we can approve both items.
All right, on the pension plan, we have our interim pension financial for the Cotpa employee retirement system, and I just wanted to point out a couple of things, more or less just information items on what's included in the report. Pages 1 through 3 is the management discussion and analysis, and I would really direct you to the first bullet point on page 1 under the financial summary heading, and just point out that through September 30th of 2015, our net position in the Cotpa pension is about $10.7 million, and that is a decrease from our net position that was reported a year ago this time. The decrease is about $419,000. You can see the explanation of the change in that net position on the next page, on page 2, in those tables. But it's due to changes in investment performance. So we did experience, we've experienced a loss in our investments, and we know that with the equity markets primarily, it's probably not a surprise at this point. But we will continue to monitor that. We continue to have our quarterly pension meetings and reviews with our investment advisor. In fact, I believe it is on page. Let me find it here, I'm sorry. On page 9 of the report, you can see our asset allocation, and we have guidelines in terms of our investment mix, the proportion of the investments that are in domestic equities, international, various fixed income investments, and alternatives. And I would just point out that you can see we are within our target range of that approved investment mix that the pension committee and the trustees have approved. So, we're within our investment allocation mix. Just the downturn in the equity market has impacted and caused that change in that position. With that, I'll be happy to answer any other questions about the pension report.
Any questions on either of the financials? If not, I'd hear a motion to receive our financial reports.
So moved.
All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. Program reports. Our first is our transit system report. Good morning.
Good morning, Chairman. Good morning, trustees. Thanks for having us. I'd like to touch on 4 topics: safety, ridership, on-time performance, and year-to-date attainment of our benchmarks. As a quick update, on January 8th, I'll be touching on 5 topics as a minimum, including Streetcar. Safety. We were responsible for 7 preventable accidents during the month of October 2015, which is a higher number than normal, much higher than we want. We were responsible for 3 non-preventable. We experienced 3 non-preventable accidents. I'd like to we define an accident as strictly as any transit organization in America. I'm not hiding behind it, but an accident to us is any time one of our vehicles impacts something that it is not intended to impact, including curbs, including mirrors, And in many cases, there is no financial loss or bodily harm, but we are this strict so that we can learn from everything that every mishap that we have. And no preventable accident is minor, but I can tell you that 5 of the 7 accidents had almost no financial impact to us. Our rolling 3-month average, by the way, is 5.3 preventable accidents per month, and we have beefed up our safety program, and I have another little thing that I'll be describing that we're going to start doing on Monday that will assist in bringing safety even further ahead. Our ridership, if you please look at the presentation slide, you'll see that we achieved 11,747 passengers per day on our fixed route Monday through Friday, which is a 1.25% increase over the previous year in October. I'd like to point out again without excuses that if we eliminate or took out the 2 inclement weather days, the 22nd and the 30th, which was Halloween, we would be at the number very close to the number that we all like, which is 12,000 passengers per day. We would have achieved 11,974. Our downtown Discovery ridership Monday through Friday was up 25%. Our downtown Discovery Saturday ridership was up 7%. And through the year to date, we are up 4.2% in the Monday through Friday fixed route services. If you would, yes, the new night service, thanks Jeannie, slide. If you will take a quick look at that, it went from 214 passengers per day to 189 passengers per day, which is an 11.7% decline. We started out strongly. That's the way these things go, I guess, occasionally, and that will recover, and that service is extremely valuable. Our on-time performance was 64.7%, which is a 1.3% decrease compared to October 2014, and a 2.4% drop from the previous month. We are working, I can tell you that since I've been here, and this again isn't an excuse, it's a thing that we have to factor into what we're doing. There are more detours than ever, I believe, in Oklahoma City, and I can point to a number of routes, 7 and 8, et cetera, where at least 3 weeks during the month we had to detour. And we do very creative things, but we're not, our staff, our fellows jump into vans and other things and run and pick up when we're caught by trains. But we only have so many of those people. And there's something that I'm going to look into and with Jason, and that is that we're going to look, our system doesn't adjust at all for on-time performance in terms of weather, in terms of really odd things that are beyond our control, or at least that we can impact directly. And I'm going to look to, so that we can more clearly focus on, the things that we can control. I'm going to look into, or we're going to look into, possibly eliminating the things that are beyond our control that kind of confuse what the true situation is. But I will tell you that, these guys are heroic in jumping into vans and leaving either from the transit center or from the operations center and picking up the people at 9th and Robinson when we have a train to kind of hopscotch over each other. Let's see. Yes, our report card for the year, I'll just run through the percentages of the number of passengers per service hour. We're at 99%. Number of passengers per operating day, we're at 103%. The number of on-time bus arrivals, working very hard on this, we're at 89%. We slipped a bit from last month. The miles between road calls were at 106%, which is good. Vehicle accidents we are 65% above where we should be. That's not good. We're working on that. And the number of passenger claims, we are at 91%, which is good. I'll be pleased to answer any questions, or I can hardly wait to talk about the streetcar, too. I can tell you between Jason, Larry, and I, just take yesterday, we spent a minimum of 4.5 hours collectively chasing the streetcar around.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. long-range plan. Larry here? Yeah, Larry.
Good morning. Yeah, I'll follow up a little bit on the comments about Streetcar and also a little bit about some partnerships. It was great that we've got that consultant that we're hiring, for to help us with that operations and maintenance decision. A lot of other things also happened in November as well, though. One was remember the peer review that we did last month where we had some cities come in. All of those results were summarized and they were sent on to MAPS so that they could be using those observations about the maintenance facility as well as the mainline routing, and so that's good. In this past month also, City Council made that decision to award a contract to Brookville Mining Corporation to buy the streetcars from them. We've been in touch with the 3 cities that either have or will have delivery on Brookville cars because we're going to have something in common with them for several decades to come. And so, to understand maintenance practices, training, the tendencies of the vehicles, parts, et cetera, it'll be good to kind of have an ongoing relationship with them. And then because of the relocation of the convention center, that is going to affect the routing of Streetcar, and Cotpa has submitted comments on criteria that ought to be used to try to look at types of routing, and even have had some suggestions about routing at that end of the system. Another thing, and it kind of relates to on-time performance, traffic signal prioritization. The report shows that we did some research and provided a report to other departments on basically TSP, and that P is not panacea, it's prioritization on the use of basically traffic signals to help transit vehicles stay on time. And good report, and I think that information will be useful not just in the Streetcar, but for others. But again, it's not something that's widely used like everywhere on a route. It's not a panacea. And then the other thing I guess I would mention from the report here is in terms of partnership, we arranged for Cotpa to again host the Regional Public Transportation Coordination Meeting. This fall marks really the 10th year that Cotpa has basically overseen and brought together what's now 4 transit agencies in the region. Every quarter we get together for a couple of hours and we talk about what we've been doing the last 90 days, what we'll be doing the next 90 days, and that's been a good opportunity to try to keep the transit agencies kind of in harmony. We kind of know what each other's doing. We share insights. And this time we'll be having it in December because Chip Nolan, being from Edmond, he would have actually been the person to host it and take care of the summary. So we just volunteered at Cotpa to go ahead and handle that for 2 months. So that's really my comments. If you have any questions, be glad to answer.
You might, either you or Jason, just, when all the mayors met this past week, I guess, to form the transit task force. Would you like to speak to that just a moment, or?
Okay. Yes. That really, starting with the fixed guideway plan, back in 2005, Cotpa identified even more than we did in the long-range plan, this need for regional cooperation. And I think Mayor Cornett's comments at that gathering were great because really he talked about how back with the fixed guideway plan from 2005, it was identified there was really a need to get serious about, kind of banding together. And it was a great gathering of mayors and city managers and some transit advocates. And, it's really it's a great step because all the cities have now basically put funds forth to, not to run and start a big transit agency, but basically to do a lot of the really key exploratory steps, the legal issues, initial staffing, models to use, and really get serious about trying to do something like that. So it really was a very, very kind of a monumental step. It's really just one of several that would still have to be taken, but it was a good gathering, a good event.
Well, I think it is a monumental step because you've got all the cities in the Metroplex that have finally come to the realization that they're going to have to put money into this if we're going to do it. And I think they're all the mayors, it sounded to me like in the discussion I saw in the paper, have come to that realization that if we're going to do it, it costs money.
And the other thing I would add to that is, as far as how the task force itself will work, is designees from each of the participating cities, of course, will serve on that task force, but along with their transit agency. So Cotpa is heavily involved. We will be part of that task force, and of course keeping the trustees and the board informed every step of the way. So we're looking forward to working with the group and being part of that as well.
It's taken a while to get this far, but we're moving along. So, our parking.
I can do the parking report, and then
I thought Corey would do it. I mean,
we gave him this month off, but next week or next month he'll be here and ready to go. If I can, before I get into the parking report, the other thing I did want to mention, kind of in the interest of long-range planning, is one of the things we're very excited about is the approval of the long-term transportation bill by the Senate yesterday. It's passed both House and Senate, and obviously on its way to the President. And so for us, and we're still sorting through all the details and everything that's included in that, but for one thing, it's a 5-year funded bill. So that's something we haven't had as in transit for a considerable amount of time. And so particularly in the areas of planning, we now feel like we have at least 5 years worth of time frame to look at it when we look at facility needs and rolling stock needs and just trying to continue to expand our system. There's a lot more predictability now with a long-term bill. So we're very excited about that. As far as at least initially some of the impacts it'll have on us as a transit agency locally, one of the things we've really been working through all of our associations and our lobbyists for is to increase the amount of funding for bus and bus facilities. And that was a big part of what this transportation bill is about, is it increases what we refer to as the 5339 funding by about 62.5% from current levels in the first year of the bill, and then works up to about overall, I think about an 80% increase in the amount of funding allocated for bus and bus facilities. So that's going to be very helpful to all transit agencies, particularly for us. We know the condition of our fleet and the percentage of our fleet that's past our useful life. So that's a plus. And then on the regular formula allocation, the bill also includes increases for regular formula funding. In 2016, we're looking at about a 1.8% increase overall in formula funding, working up to an overall increase in formula funding of around 10 to 11% by 2020. So there's some steady increases built into that formula allocation as well. So there's a lot of other pieces, obviously, to the transit portion of the bill, but those are the primary two changes that are going to affect us, and they're positive changes.
So, Jason, I had one question. Sorry. What is the percentage? Do the federal, local percentage stay the same? Or?
Yeah, for the most part, yeah, it's still a 80-20, so a 20% local match, yes. The bus and bus facilities, the 5339, I believe the local match, it's actually a 15%, but those are relatively unchanged. Okay, and then quickly, just a couple things to mention on the parking report. If you look at our occupancy, our overall occupancy is about 107%. It's a bit of a decline from last month when we were at 110%. We've actually seen or experienced a reduction of 94 contract parkers between the 2 months, and most of that is actually in the Arts District garage. We had about 55 less contract parkers in Arts District in October than we did in September, and Corey and I have already continued discussions with Republic about what we can do to begin filling that garage up. The other thing I would mention on your report is you'll notice a new section on the report down at the bottom where I've identified tenant lease discounts, and this is consistent with the resolution that was approved by the trustees last month, where we had indicated that if we do, the administrator does grant any discounts, we would include that as part of the parking report. So you'll see for October we provided a discount of $2,075 to the Oklahoma City Public Schools Foundation for their for their lease rate, and that's due to the fact that the common restrooms are still not complete and totally accessible to them. So we're working with them in that fashion. And that's all I have on the parking report.
All right. Any questions? All right, our marketing and customer relations and technology report.
Good morning.
Morning.
Larry's helping me out. We're handing out an article that was released yesterday, and you may have seen it, but wanted to make sure you did see it, regarding the launch of the Wi-Fi service. On our next slide, we show here, this is what the screen looks like when you're on board a bus and you bring it up on your phone or a tablet, and it just gives a short description. You have to agree to the terms, and then you have full access to Wi-Fi internet there. Again, we had launched this on October 15th, and we have it on board 59 buses, fixed route buses. On the next slide, we again, this is some of the promotional material imagery that we've used, and we also do have some decals on buses. But since that time in October that we released it, we have consumed, or our passengers have consumed about 1.4 terabytes of data. So what that looks like on an average daily, for the system, we're looking at about 33.7 gigabytes per day for the system. And if we break that down a little bit further, that looks like 1.6 gigabytes on a daily average per bus. So we're using a lot of data. It's still very new, and we see it fluctuate at different times of the month. And just to compare that to what you and I might experience, or what they say the national average is 1.8 gigabytes a month is what a single person typically consumes, whether it's on their phone or maybe an iPad or something of that nature. So we're looking at 1.6 gigabytes per day per bus, and the national average is 1.8 per month per person. So there's just gives you a little idea of how well it's being used and how popular it is, and I think, again, a great amenity that we have offered to our customers, and also an incentive to those who don't use the service now to start using it. This article does a great job. I think we have Professor Morrow. He works at OCCC, has for many years, and he's what we would call a choice rider. He chooses to ride, not because he doesn't have any other means, but because he wants to. And he kind of, I think, definitely exemplifies all of the reasons why we promote using Wi-Fi and public transit as a choice rider. So it's really unique to have all of those things characterized in one person. But he does a good job of doing that for us. We also want to just let you know that we have credit card and debit card machines now at the transit center. We hope to display that moniker of now accepting within the next couple of weeks. We're working out some kinks just with data connections. We want to make sure it works really well so we don't create any customer issues. So we're working out those, and again, we hope to be displaying that and offering that to our customers very soon. Just a couple of things coming up I wanted to make you aware of is that on December 15th, Oklahoma Watch, which is a nonprofit news organization, is going to be hosting a public forum on public transportation at Camp's 1910 Cafe here in downtown Oklahoma City. It'll be from 6 to 7 p.m. And they have asked that Administrator Fairbrush is the keynote or key speaker during that hour to answer questions about where public transportation is, the state of that here in Oklahoma City, updates on the streetcar progress, and then they have a couple of other speakers as well to answer questions. And that would be Danny O'Connor from ACOG, as well as the former chair of the local chapter of APT, which is the Alliance for Public Transportation, Lauren White, who is also the CEO at New View. So I just want to make you aware of that. If you want to attend, they usually say there's between 75 to 100 people that fit into that venue. But we see this as an opportunity, again, to make the public aware of what all the trust has done to prepare us for this regional transit dialogue and for the planning that has taken place in the previous years. So this is just a great public forum to put that out there. We also have just concluded the onboard survey for all of our bus service. We should start receiving some preliminary reports around the 1st of January. While those are coming in, we're also preparing currently the non-rider survey. So that would be kind of the choice rider survey of why people may not be using it, or why they travel the way they do. And that is being done right now, and we expect that to launch in mid-January. And that will be done through phone surveys as well as a postage-paid print survey. So they'll go out in the mail with a postage-paid return envelope, and then that'll come back to us. And so we're trying to use a couple of different venues for getting the information from people. It's very hard to capture information just one way anymore, just because we all consume and check news and things of that nature very differently. With that, I'd be glad to answer any questions about these items or those you see in the report.
Well, Barney, surely you have a comment about Wi-Fi, and that we've got all that done.
Oh, no, I think it's wonderful. Choice riders are what we're trying to attract, and that's the growth area for us. So providing the Wi-Fi surely helps attract those people.
Absolutely.
What is the date again at camps?
December 15th. That's a Tuesday evening.
All right. Any other questions?
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. River cruises and Spokies, the bicycles.
Yes, bicycles. Well, for River, ridership year-to-date is at 11.13 riders per service hour. The goal is to maintain at least 10 riders per service hour on average. Staff believes the ferry service serves to meet that goal while keeping operating expenses in line with our budget. So we're very pleased about having a ferry service that serves our customer base, bringing people from Meridian and other areas into the Bricktown area, and still maintaining our operating expenditure budget. The budget savings that we have will be used beginning in the 2016 season to increase our charter and specialty cruise offerings, which will drive those revenues up and not put too much of a burden on our budget. I need to report to you that on November 5th, it was actually at our last month's budget meeting, it was discovered, actually our board meeting on the 6th, it was discovered on the 6th that the evening before, on the 5th, an individual had climbed the fence at the exchange maintenance facility, causing some damage to the vessels and taking an air compressor and a ladder from our dock storage building. Video of the incident was reviewed by the Oklahoma City Police Department, and an investigation is underway. The estimated loss is around $2,000, so we weren't hit too badly. Pilot house windows were broken in each of the 3 vessels, and then a cabin building or window was broken into in the Discovery, and some audiovisual equipment was taken out of that. All 3 vessels have since been refurbished, and there was no loss to our ferry service operation. On December 20th, the Air Comfort Solutions Holiday Boat Parade will take place. This will be the 11th year of the boat parade on the Oklahoma River, which started in 2004. It is a free event and draws thousands of spectators every year. It begins with a water ski show, which if you didn't go last year, it's a very good water ski show, and followed by the boat parade, the visit from Santa, and a fireworks display. And this year, brand new, there will be sailboats. So this should be an interesting event. As for Spokies, even as the colder temperatures move into Oklahoma City, we still have users of the system. We had 606 users of the system in October, which surprised me, as cool as it is, but it demonstrates that there are people who still enjoy using the service to get around the downtown area. Staff is using this time to promote gift memberships for the holidays. What you see in the presentation there is a door hanger that's being distributed. This door hanger is going out to over 6,000 homes. and it is a 20% off annual membership. If you purchase it online through the Embark website, you receive the gift certificate in the mail with a code that the recipient of the gift can then use to sign up for their annual membership. There's the distribution area showing the areas. These, Michael and his group spent some time looking at who would most benefit from Spokies and use this area as their distribution network. It will be distributed 3 different times. It's a rotation so that no one misses out. There'll be the door hanger will be distributed to the 6,200 plus homes, and then again, and then once again, to make sure that we get a good distribution and some good awareness of our Spokies program. Staff is also reviewing the proposals that we received for new bike share equipment. We're hoping to find a system with newer technology that's better for the user and more sustainable for our operator bicycle transit systems. And with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
This would make us a more healthier city.
Yes. Yes, our sponsor, Blue Cross Blue Shield, we met with them yesterday, and they are very excited about what we've been doing with Spokey, some of the outreach programs that Joshua Vaught, our general manager of bicycle transit systems, has been doing, going out. He'll be at a, what's the festival? The Mesta Park Home Tour, to get some people out, instead of driving around, get on a bicycle and ride around on a bicycle, get a little exercise.
Any other questions? All right, thank you. I would entertain a motion to receive all our program reports.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. Before we adjourn to executive session, any questions or comments from the trustees?
I've got something real quick. We referenced the transportation bill, and worth pointing out Oklahoma City's involvement in that, and that Mayor Cornett and Mayor de Blasio from New York City both worked hand in hand, did a New York Times editorial, got the energy up with the other mayors around the country, and worked closely with Senator Inhofe's office. So everyone's pleased. What we wanted was more money and a little longer term, and we got both things. So it's a promising bill there.
All right. Thank you. All right.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. Oh, Mr. Are you? All right. You need signatures.